These are home movies we took in starting in 1927, and I'm Dick Strachan. These were in Connecticut, where we used to go in Richfield, Connecticut. We go in the summer. That was Mr. Keeler. This is, forget the name of the dog. That's my mother, Mr. Fish, my dad. And there I am. We were playing with the Keeler boys up there.
Were you the only one that wore a straw hat?
No, Bob and I, we got straw hats every summer when we went up there. Then we're getting ready to go down to the pond to go swimming. This was a house next to us up there, a real nice country home. I forget the name of the people that had it. That's my brother Bob. These were about 1927 we started taking these pictures. There we are on a bringing in hay from the farm into the barn.
We went to Ridgefield about 3 years ago and found all these places again. Had a wonderful visit with the editor of the paper.
That was me up on front of the wagon. That's my mother getting up on a ladder. It's hard to keep up with these. I think my dad wanted to cover everything that was in there and as quick as he could. That was Miss Phelan. There she is feeding the dog. This was down at on Long Island Sound in Connecticut out of Stratford. I think it was Lordship Beach was the name of the beach. And there I am eating. The beach along the north shore of, or south shore of Connecticut is real rocky. There's Mother picking raspberries. There I am in the back of a wagon. I rode that horse for one day, and I'll tell you, that really set me down, couldn't move. This was Aunt Lottie, one of the Keeler relatives. Brings back a lot of memories looking at these things. That's me riding a horse up there. That's Bob and I. There's our new straw hats we had each year. There we are walking around the same gate again. That's Bob. There we are bringing the cows home. As I say, I think this is all around 1927. Bob looks like he'd be about, what, 4 years older?
Mm-hmm.
There he goes over the fence again. That's me swimming. Now that's good music in the background to be on the water, harbor lights.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where this was taken.
What is that child doing?
He's just standing in a barrel and falling over. That's Mr. Keeler again up in Richfield. And he owned the farm where we went in the summertime. That's my dad getting over to see. Dad flew the kite for us. I believe they were picking corn, and there's a picture coming up of Dad kissing Mom, and I guess she must have gotten a red ear of corn. There we are sorting apples. We have the jingle bells at home that came off the sled up there in Ridgefield when we go to church in the wintertime in a sled, and the jingle bells of what we have in the living room. These pictures are in Freeport. That's Willard Brand, cousin of Mom's. I don't know who the that man is. These were taken from our dock in Freeport. That's my mom in the middle. That must have been the bathing beauties of that day. That's me on the back on a raft, and I think that's one of the Umstead boys rowing the boat. Couldn't do much skiing like that, could you? The Umsteads were related to Aunt Emily. And that's Bob getting ready to swim. I think that was Trixie. I think that was a dog we had named Trixie. Hasn't changed much across the water there other than those vacant lots are filled in with houses, but I think those other houses are still there. This was 1988 when we were recording this for you. The Guy Lombardo music is good background here because Guy Lombardo lived about one canal over from us, one bay over from us there in Freeport. He'd run his Tempo speedboat through there all the time. There's Bob and I digging clams. And there we are in Brooklyn with the snowplow and the park across the street from us. When it snowed, they'd come through and clean the paths off. The man in the back, Mike was his name. He was the superintendent in that park. And these are the Kellys that lived next door to us in Brooklyn. Lived in half the house, other half of our house. And this was in Amityville. We must have been up there wintertime to check the house out for my grandmother. That's my mother and Bob and I. That was a picturesque place with that setting.
Pop was at his best with the camera here, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's Uncle Dick's boat in the background that's covered up at wintertime. My mother was playing rough. And these were down at Reese's Park over in the Rockaways. And this is in my grandmother's backyard in Brooklyn on South Oxford Street. Must have gone there on a Sunday after church, I guess. We were all dressed up. That's my grandmother. She hated to have her picture taken. She'd do anything to keep from having her picture. We've got photographs of her where she would cut her picture out of them. That's my mom. Here we are back at Reese's Park. Wonder how long it took us before we took our shoes off. I guess Mom didn't want Dad in this picture. Cut his head off. There's Pop flying a kite for us again. Don't know why Bob was posing like that with one foot up in the air. There I am playing baseball with my dad. Ought to be able to date those pictures with the knickers, shouldn't we? Well, this was in Amityville again. That's Uncle Dick's boat. That's the boat he fell off when he drowned. Well, that's Aunt Alice coming out there, and Uncle Dick. This was a Sunday school parade in Brooklyn. Sunday school started in Brooklyn, New York, and every year they had a parade on a Saturday afternoon with all the Sunday schools in the city. That was me carrying that banner. And little children were put in these things that almost like a harness where they would walk. This was when Aunt Alice and May took me on a trip to Nassau on the Mauritania. It was a Canard Line 4-stack steamer. It was either a 4-day or a week trip. We lived on the ship and went on. The only port we stopped in was Nassau. This was their swimming pool. You see, you had to be real coordinated to dive into that water. And that's me, and that's May. And these are the natives down there diving for coins. I imagine they're still doing that when you pull a ship in there. The water was just as clear as could be. And they'd throw coins over and they'd dive for them. And those were the boats that came to take us into Nassau. And this was the Mauritania. That was one of the places we visited down there. I remember going in a dungeon there, and I thought the guide was running away from me. He tripped up the stairs, and I really didn't see a thing. I just tore after him to not get lost down there.
Now, your father wasn't there to take these pictures.
No, Aunt Alice must have been taking these. That's me. That's May. There's the swimming pool again. Not like the ships today, the cruise ships. This was leaving Amityville going to Freeport. This was a boat that we bought. Our first boat was a 14-foot Old Town outboard. And there's Dad and Mother and Bob and I. We were heading to Freeport. And this was home in Freeport. That was one of our dogs. I forget the name of that pup. These were the Westavelts. I believe that was their name. And this is back up in Connecticut with the Severances. He was a minister, Methodist minister that we knew, and we had a cookout on the beach. This is a bubble boat we had. It was these 3 tubes, and you sat in the thing. It had a sail on it, and of course you couldn't get anywhere with it sitting in the water like that, but it was a lot of fun. We had it for a good many years. That's Bob in the front. I think one of these is me diving off the diving board, but I don't. That's me on the diving board. Well, there's the rocks on the beaches in Connecticut side of Long Island Sound. That was awful walking on those things. There's the sail on our bubble boat. And this was at a lake up in Connecticut. That scene in the background was an ice house. They cut ice out of this lake in the wintertime and stored it in that ice house with sawdust, so they'd have ice all year long. There's the ice house in the background. Things sure have changed, haven't they? That's Mr. Severance. He used to really enjoy those cookouts. They'd dig a pit and they'd put seaweed down in there and then put clams and corn and potatoes, all that in there, and let them steam in the pit. This was our first motel experience. These were what they called tourist cabins. And this was up in Massachusetts. That was the Holiday Inn of the time. That was our car was an L car, ELCAR. It had an international motor in it. I don't know who built the body, but it was a thing they tried and didn't last but a couple of years. But that was the car we had. Here we are in Connecticut on the 4th of July. We're going to set a firecracker off under a can. And that's me setting it off and Bob on the back there. Well, we blew a hole in that, didn't we? That's Uncle Dick and his 1929 Buick. I remember that car. That's May getting in the car, Uncle Dick getting in the front. They didn't go very far. That's my grandmother getting out. I don't know what all this was about. That's my grandmother in Amityville. She enjoyed that house and the flowers there. We went by there a few years ago and took a picture of the house to the man that owned the house now. And he had done a lot of changing. He appreciated getting the picture. That's my grandmother and her sister, Aunt Alice Dixon. May look real young there, didn't she? There they are getting in Uncle Dick's boat again to go for a ride. That was me in the sailor suit. This was one of the boats coming back in down that river there in Amityville. There we are swimming in the front. That's where I learned to swim. They'd tie me in a life ring, put a clothesline on it. When they wanted me in out the water, they'd bring the clothesline in. That's Alfred Dixon in our bubble boat with me. And this is still in Amityville.
Did your family sell that right after when it died? Or what?
No, they didn't sell it till after we got till, what, 1946, 1947. They rented it during World War II.
Did they ever go back there at all?
No. That's Aunt Alice. No, they owned that when we got back out of the service. This is over in Gilgo, which is the beach across from Amityville next to Jones Beach. You can only get here in a boat. And there were houses over there, but no automobiles and no roads. Now, this is in Arlington, New Jersey. I must have gone over there to see the Dixons. That's Uncle Dick, and that was Lois's grandfather, Lois Dixon's grandfather, Lois Moffat's grandfather. That's Uncle Dick and Aunt Nell. This was a sailboat there in Amityville. It was always my ambition to have a boat just like that. Never did get that. Did get my sailboat, but not that one. Don't know what happened there. I think he knew we were taking the pictures, and he just moved around, sailed around there so we would get them. Now this is my boat, my sailboat in Freeport.
Did you tell me somebody gave you that boat?
Yeah, they gave us that boat. Somebody just had a boat out there in the water and asked me one day. I was sailing a rowboat we had, and he wanted to know if my dad would let me have a bigger boat. And he gave it to me. It was a 16-foot catboat, had 180 square foot of sail on it. And this was up at Camp Brooklyn in the Poconos, a YMCA camp that Bob went to one summer. That was the summer we were poor and we couldn't go out to Freeport. We rented the house, so they let Bob go to camp. That's Bob and I putting up the sail on the boat. And you see who's doing the work.
Is that Bobby?
And that's Bobby doing the work. Now this got out of place. This is back up in Connecticut. We were much younger here. And that's Mr. Fish with my mother.
Awful lot of loving.
Yeah. That was Miss Phelan with my dad. And this is in our backyard in Brooklyn. This was our wedding in Columbia on January 30th, 1944.
That's my mother.
I didn't know they were taking the movie, so they didn't get us in here. And this is up in Durham when we lived up there right after we were married. I was at Camp Butner. It's Charlie Meckes and Charlie Sweats. That was Jan Johnson. Wasn't that who that was?
Yes. Precious little girl.
And this is the Virgin child, Major Virgin. And that's the bride, taken at our home we had there in Durham on Robin Hood Court. This was Easter Sunday in 1944 at the gardens at Duke University. They had just replanted the gardens, and wasn't that it?
Yes, they weren't as pretty as they are now.
And that's the second lieutenant in front of one of the bushes. And there comes the bride, and that's her going away dress. That you made that, didn't you?
No, I
Didn't make that. It's a pretty yellow, I remember. These were the gardens again. The color is really faded in these, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. That was one set of my flat shoes I bought when I started going with you.
And that's the Duke Chapel. This was Betty graduating from high school. And that was taken on Colonial Drive. And for her high school graduation, we gave her a trip to New York. And you and Betty went up to see Mom and Pop. I was overseas at that time.
This was a family picnic they had for us. I think that was when I found out how much watermelon meant to people who didn't live in the South. They had gone to a lot of trouble to buy them for us then.
This is Sally when she was 10 months old down in Charleston. We lived down there. And there she is. She was a chubby little thing. She couldn't get her hands up over her head. I remember every time I take a picture, she'd try to come to the camera. And there's Sally up on our porch at 11 Meeting Street in Charleston. She wasn't walking too well then, was she?
No.
There you are, doing what? I'm a little teapot. And here she is down to Isle of Palms.
Loved the taste of that salty sand.
I think we got a picture coming up here with a split in the back of her bathing suit when she's crawling away there. I thought these were in color, and the color must have faded on these. There she is eating the sand again.
That's a little yellow wool bathing suit May knitted for her, I think.
She loved the puddles. And she'd walk down the beach, and the first little puddle she'd get in, she'd want to stop there and play. There's the hole in the back of her pants. This is Sally's first birthday.
She had never tasted cake or anything sweet like that before. Watch what she does with it.
When the children were born, what we tried to do each year, we'd buy one roll of 16mm film for them for the birthdays, which were in June, and then we'd buy another roll at Christmas time. There's she, spitting the icing out. She learned a lot in a year. When we get to the second birthday, she really was eating the icing. This was May and Aunt Alice with Sally down at Brook Green Garden. May knitted that doll for her, didn't she?
Oh, yes. In fact, she and Francie wore 2 sets of that doll.
It's Aunt Alice and May. And this was a dress that was May's, and she wanted to take a picture, get a picture of it and Sally in it before she sent it back to England to some relatives. But that was May's, wasn't it, when she was a child?
Yes. That's the little life jacket that we bought her, and it's still up at Lake Murray. All the children have used it. All in the water.
Isle of Palms was different then. You could drive your car right out on the beach. We would go out there on Saturdays and take a picnic lunch and spend the afternoon out there. This was down the Battery in Charleston. Beck would take Sally down there every Friday, and when I'd come home from traveling all week, I'd go down there and look for her. They'd be down there playing. Look at that curly hair she had.